Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon Wound Pickups.
Hey, this is me, Todd Novak. We are super happy that you are listening to our show, the Guitar Knobs podcast. Yep. We are in this hot little room in Columbus, Ohio, and we're doing what we love to do, bringing this good stuff to you, and we hope that you enjoy this show. It's very special. We have somebody special on the line because that's why it's special.
Hey, this is Zac with McPeters Guitars.
Zac with McPeters Guitars.
Yeah.
We have occasionally we have the opportunity to pull in somebody that hasn't necessarily broke big on the scene yet. Well, and I shouldn't say occasionally. I mean, well, no, we've done a couple of them like that. I would say, and I think that they're doing pretty well right now, as a matter of fact.
As a result.
I'm just saying.
Right, yeah.
So anyways, these guitars caught my eye, and we started talking. I said, hey, why don't we get you on the show? And we're going to go down and visit them at NAMM in just a few weeks here. So we're really excited about that. So we'll get into all of this interview business shortly. If you are not driving and you want to check out what we are talking about, go to McPetersGuitars.com, right? Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. MCPetersGuitars.com. Also on Instagram at the same thing, McPeters Guitars. So check out what we're talking about right now if you have your hands free, not attached to a steering wheel.
It's worth it. Really cool guitars.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Gentlemen, we got a little bit of business to deal with, but not much. I just want to say that if you are listening to our show, and you have been, and you like the show, I would very much appreciate if you wouldn't mind going out on the old wherever you're listening, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever. And if you wouldn't mind just writing us a great review, it helps us bubble up to the top so that other folks that might not have seen us will listen to us. Please. It really does help, and we would really appreciate it. And we would love to hear from you.
Yep.
So we got a couple great emails telling us that, we've got some people who are liking what we're doing, and that's much appreciated. We'd love to hear from you. As I just said, I wanted to reiterate that because I mean it. Oh.
Tell me about the rabbits, George.
Do it.
All right. Let's get into what's going on in our music world this week. Jared.
Alrighty. So I bought a new car.
What?
I bought a new car.
That doesn't have anything to do with guitar.
Well,
dude.
listen.
It's a car that he can't fit any guitars in.
Yeah. Right?
It'll slide right into the guitar story.
Okay.
So
yeah, I got to see where this is going.
So I bought a new car, and the new car was up in Fremont, Ohio, which is a few hours north of where we are now, because I had my truck with me when I bought this car, and I'm keeping my truck. Hence, I drove the car, truck back. Had a buddy drive my truck. Let me back up.
Oh, this is riveting already.
I know it. A buddy and I took my truck up there.
Which buddy?
Buford T. Justice.
What's going on,
He
Buford?
actually has a friend named Buford.
Buford, that's right. We went up to Fremont.
He's got a Mootron.
That's right. We went into the guitar shop there, and just to see my good old buddy, and that owns
what's
the
his
place.
name?
Dusty Bob.
Dusty Bob.
Oh my gosh.
His name's really Dusty
This is
Bob.
crazy.
Gotta love it.
Okay, go ahead.
So anyway, I'm looking at his guitars just to get a little peek at what he's got in the store. And what caught my eye was a 1967 Silvertone guitar. And the model number is some number that I don't remember, but it is beautiful. It's crazy looking. And I said, hey, man, how much for this guitar? He's like, I don't know. I don't know what it's worth. Let me see what it's worth. He didn't have a price on it. So we wheeled and dealed and, traded and whatever. And I ended up with this guitar. It is one of the coolest guitars I've ever.
Is that red one you showed us?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, that
the
is-
Tiesco.
Yeah, it looks like some crazy Russian job.
It does, but
mean, it
was
does. It
really
doesn't even
well
look
done.
Japanese.
I mean, the body is crazy looking. The paint job on it is fantastic.
It's got all these rocker switches on it, which I do love.
Yep, it has the rocker switches. It's got an aluminum pickguard.
Yeah, a
And it's
billeted
got-
aluminum pickguard.
Yes, it is way cool. It's got a tremolo bar on
You
it.
stole that thing.
So as my note to you was it is a Silvertone 1436,
That's right.
which is also known as a Tiesco ET-230 K2-L.
Thank you for that really good
Well,
information.
no, if it's Japanese, isn't it Taisco?
You can call it what you want.
Or,
you guys can call it
Taisco.
whatever you
Taisco.
want.
It would be a Taisco.
Taisco.
Anyways,
Oh,
all right.
well.
But
Potato.
Here's a
Yeah,
little
I
bit of
tell ya.
sprinkles on the top for you.
Okay.
Sprinkles.
It came with the original chipboard case.
All right.
It came with the original Sears and Roebuck payment book.
That's super cool.
That's a neat.
Yeah, you really did score.
And it still
that's an awesome
has
guitar.
It still has.
How many payments are owed?
There's still some payment brochure things in there, but it still has the original flat wounds that it.
No,
somebody
that
put
is a
on
cool guitar. That's one of the more desirable ones.
Somebody fussed around with the tuner bushings, so I got to get that fixed. But after that's fixed, I think it's going to be great. Put some different strings on it and kind of see how it's made underneath. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
So,
Now, speaking of flat rounds, you probably not going to, if you don't put flat wounds on it, what's the other one? Is it round wound? No, not
Standard strings are round wounds.
Yeah, no, but the other kind that aren't completely not
Ground wounds.
Ground wounds?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ground wounds are like
be kinda
halfway in between.
now, if you, and for you guitar players
There's
out
another
there
one, too.
that are looking to strengthen your fingers and your playing, get yourself a set of flat wounds. Put them on your guitar, and then practice with those. That'll toughen your fingers right up. They're larger strings and they're harder to bend.
Zach, how about you? What's going on in your music world?
Yeah, so though I'm not a bass player, I recently acquired a Hofner club bass. It's a short scale, a hollow body bass. It's been a ton of fun and, an awesome bargain, I would say. Solid instrument. I don't really have a whole lot to complain about and would recommend it to anyone that's out there looking for something like that.
Cool. What color is it?
It is a Sunburst.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of like a Les Paul shape-ish kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe a little smaller.
Nice. Not bad. Are you, what possessed you to pick up a bass?
Yeah, so in my spare time, I've kind of been working on some soul music type jams and Logic, and I'm a huge fan of Otis Redding and Sam Cooke and that sort of stuff. So I figured, there's no keyboard or MIDI controller that'll really come close to having an actual bass in the mix. So I decided to pull the trigger and see if I couldn't add some of that in there.
Awesome. Why not? That's cool. Tony, what's up with you?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So, I've been on this on again, off again hunt for an SG project. Mm-hmm. And I've had my eye on this it's Guild's version of an SG. It's called an S100. And in particular, I've always wanted to get one of the 70s that has the acorns and oak leaves carved into the top. Well, lo and behold, the good people at eBay sent this 20% off coupon to me, which was very nice of them.
That's cool.
I mean, I had to use it by 7 o'clock Pacific time, and there I was, 9:30, scrambling through eBay, and I find a guy who I've bought other necks and bodies from before, had this body and neck from it's a 73 Guild S100. I think officially it's a C or SC, which means it's carved, and it's got the acorns and oak leaves carved into it. So with the discount, it came into a very affordable price. So that's going to be my next project. So that should be arriving here in the not too distant future.
Wow.
Oh, that's very
But
cool.
they're cool guitars. I've had other S100s before, and they're really well made. slightly different shape than an SG, but still the same idea.
I had a buddy that had one of those, and it was really nice.
Yeah.
They're great guitars.
Yeah. So I figured, well, if I'm going to do something fun, I might as well get one that's carved up like that. So
I think Johnny from Alchemy has one too, hanging up. Maybe not a carved one, but he's got
I think he did have an S100 up there. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that was my day. That was my half hour before the coupon expired.
Right on. Right on.
Todd, what about you?
Yeah, what's up?
Well, I have been trying to get our set list together and everything, and I'm now doing the small knob adjustments, trying to like find cool little nuances to pull in and out of during certain parts of songs and stuff. And I accidentally stomped on an extra pedal at a specific point. I was playing, let's see, I think I had the Fettle Boost on, and I had a Northern Creeper, and then I hit the Rat, and it just went woo, just like this huge feedback. And I was playing out of the Fender Blues Deluxe, and I had a Hagstrom Viking, so it was just insane feedback, right? At first I thought, oh, this is awful. Stop it. And then I was like, wait a minute. What if I can try to control this? So I figured out that if I drop the volume on the Rat just enough, and when I jump into this, there's a particular part that I want to like intro back into the song with a big, howl of feedback. And now it's cool. So
there you go.
Yeah. So that was kind of exciting, kind of fun. Nice little accident that happened. Now I just got to, manage that live.
Well, that'll be easy.
Yeah, no problem. No problems there. I'm sure nothing will happen. Nothing will go wrong. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Everything goes wrong.
It's just pedals. And I have 3 feet, so that's perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You know what it's about? Oh.
1, 2, 3. 4 on the floor.
All right, Zach, give us your 4 on the floor.
Yeah, start off with a tube screamer that I have that's modded by Analog Man with his 808 and silver mods. Played a ton of overdrives, and I have a ton of them in the closet. And I know that one's a little bit bland to some folks' taste, but with every guitar and amp that I have, it just does the trick and sounds fantastic.
Nice. Is that something that you've had for a while, or?
Yeah, I've probably had it for around 10 years now. And, every time I take it off the board, it goes back on.
So what possessed you to get an Analog Man at the time? Was it because you'd heard about that? Or
I'm a big fan of U2, and I had read somewhere back in the day that the Edge used one of Analog Man's modded tube screamers, so I had to give it a go, and it's been on my board pretty much ever since.
Well, that's a good enough reason. I mean, if you got somebody that like, I want it to sound like that, what do they use? Use that, done. Cool. Okay, what's number 2?
All right, so number 2's got to be the Diamond compressor. I love a bunch of music from the 60s, like the Byrds and that super compressed stuff. So I got to have a little compression in my signal. And it's just one of those pedals that brightens things up a little bit. It has a tone knob on it, and you miss it when it's not there. So it's an always on pedal for me.
Nice. Did you try out like several different compressors, or was that like just one that you were pointed to, or?
Yeah, I've had a couple. I've had the Keeley, and I like that quite a bit. And I had the Analog Man Bicomp, which I believe is on one side, if memory serves, it's like a orange squeezer, and the other side is his version of a Ross compressor. But there's something about the Diamond compressor. It's an optical compressor, and I'm not smart enough to know what that really means on the back end. But the way that it affects the signal, as soon as I got it, it was the sound that I always had in my head. I love it and highly recommend it.
That's cool. Is that a pretty complex pedal, or is it one of those simpler? I mean, like, it seems like compressor pedals are either like super complex and you really, really have to work with it quite a bit to get it right where you want it, or it's sometimes maybe even too simple.
No, I would say it's right somewhere in between. I mean, one of the things I really like about it is it does have an EQ knob on it, and some of the compressors that I've played with in the past will darken up your signal a bit, and it's super helpful to be able to bring it up to sound like your amp wants it to sound. And then apart from that, there is just, I think it's like a level and volume knob on it as well. So you don't have to deal with peaks or drops in volume. It's pretty straightforward. I absolutely love it, and I'm a pretty big fan of compression. And like I said, it's just one of those pedals. Whenever it's not on, I miss it, so I keep it on most of the time.
Awesome. What kind of music are you using to play with that said compressor?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty big fan of the Beatles, the Ventures, any of that early music that they just compress the hell out of in the studio. So I like to replicate some of that as I'm playing.
Right. Yeah, I know. I know that you mentioned that previously, but I wasn't sure if it was just like if that was an influence or if you were actually playing that kind of stuff. So that's cool that you're able to achieve that kind of that sound that you're looking for. I mean, everybody's always chasing the sound, so when you do lock onto it, it's pretty gratifying.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's number 3?
So number 3 is probably the most exciting one that I have on here, if that can be said. It's my Analog Man analog delay pedal, and I've got the calls it, I think it's an Amazio controller that goes along with it. So you've got an analog delay where you can have 2 different speed settings, a tap tempo, and then the option to add modulation to it. So for an analog delay pedal, it's super flexible, and it's the best delay I've come across yet.
I'm assuming you've tried out a few, because that's I'm also assuming that's a pretty expensive pedal.
It's actually not as much as you would think, but yeah, I mean, I have a Strymon Timeline, which is a phenomenal pedal for what it does. But I really like the analog flavor that comes from the Analog Man. It's just its own thing. One of those things you probably couldn't pick out in a recording, even though some people would say that you could. But when you're right in front of your amplifier, you can definitely notice it, and it impacts the feel of the playing as you're using it.
Sure. That's cool. And when you're using that, is that something that are you like it's an always on thing, or a heavy effect, or are you using it for both?
It depends. It's not usually an always on thing. I'll typically set up one of the channels to do a dotted 8 with the tap delay, and then on the other, I'll do like a slapback echo for more old school stuff.
Very nice. I like a little slapback. What's number 4?
Yeah, so number 4, right now on my board, I have a Wampler Spring Reverb, which is the closest thing I've found yet to like a outboard tube reverb. I don't have one of those. I'll probably get one someday, and I'm in the process of building one of the Surfy Bear reverbs, where he basically takes the circuit from the old Fender units and replaces the tubes with JFETs. But right now, the Wampler Spring Reverb's on my board, and I absolutely love it. I've tried a ton of reverb pedals, and it's definitely the one that sounds the most natural in a pedal format to my ears.
Yeah, they make a few pedals. I think
one or 2.
does.
I think they have 2.
Is it Wampler? Yeah, we had him on the show. He was a great dude. Great dude to talk to. I mean, the guitar community owes an awful lot to his efforts in many, many capacities. So salute to Wampler. Cool, man. That's a nice, tidy little board. One that you might want to keep an eye on if you're leaving it or laying around anywhere.
And I got to say this as well, since we're keeping it to 4 pedals, this pedal isn't necessarily necessary, but I've got 8 pedals on my board right now, and a must-have for anyone with, 6+ pedals, I've got to say, is the ZVEX Super Hard-On. It makes your signal sound so much better than just getting a super buffer. So I know it's kind of 5, but I couldn't throw it in there with only having a 4-pedal board, but thought it was definitely worth mentioning.
That's fine. We'll let that slide right in there. How do you use that essentially? Is like, where's that in your signal?
Yeah, so that's first in my signal. And basically what it does is it boosts the signal's impedance. So that high end roll off that you tend to lose whenever you're running, pedal, cable, pedal, cable, pedal, cable. It brings it back in and adds just a whole lot of clarity to the signal and a little something special due to whatever Zachary Vexter puts in that box.
Nice. Well, I know that buffers are sort of, black magic still to a lot of folks. I mean, You can get lost in the questioning in the internet about, do I need a buffer?
Yes, you do need a buffer.
You do need a buffer.
If you have more than 4 pedals, you need a buffer.
I need a buffer.
Yeah, take your cable out, plug it straight into the amp, and if you have more than 4 pedals, you'll definitely hear a difference.
Yeah.
I gotta get one of those. Help me. I want one.
Well, I actually was just I need to get one myself. I mean, honestly, I do. I've almost pulled the trigger on a few different ones, but I am trying to line somebody up as a guest that maybe talking to us about utility style pedals. So more to come on that when we announce it.
That was a cliffhanger.
I know. I also just read something that was very interesting where someone was suggesting putting a buffer at the beginning of the signal and after your fuzzes. So if you are running multiple fuzzes, if you've got 2, 3, 4 fuzzes, running a buffer after your fuzzes. I thought that's interesting.
Would not apply to me.
It would apply to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always heard that putting a buffer, I think it's before the fuzz pedal, interacts the way the fuzz pedals, or a lot of them interact. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, change the tone. I mean, what's wrong with that?
Well, it might suck. That's
Maybe it'll be better. I mean, you have a choice, A or B choice now.
I mean, a buffer does preserve high end, and it drops it to low impedance.
Yeah.
So it changes the signal, and with most pedals,
we're really persnickety about that.
Persnickety.
Yeah, you heard that when you went to go pick up that guitar from Billy Bob and
Dusty Joe,
Dusty Bottoms or whatever. Anyways,
I'm gonna pass out.
Anyways, so excellent 4+ ish.
That was overdrive. I did a fifth one.
A little fifth one there. You threw one in there too.
Yeah.
Everybody, we're going to get into the interview part of the show. Woo-hoo! We're excited about this. As I mentioned at the beginning of the top of the hour,
page 2,
we got somebody here that is really sort of cracking into the scene, as it were, right now. And I think that's an interesting thing to talk about because we are in a guitar world that is inundated with boutique brands of guitars, amps, pedals, gear of all sorts and kinds. So at this point to say, you know what, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring is admirable and I'm sure daunting in some levels. But we applaud anybody that is following their passion and their dream to create. So I'm very curious to hear this story and how you guys got started and what sort of hill you're looking up at. If you are looking up at one, maybe you're just I don't care.
Maybe
we're just
on
doing
top of the hill looking down.
Maybe.
Right.
So Zach, how did you get started in the guitar building process?
Yeah, so I always grew up around music. My father and I are the ones that build these guitars, and he's been doing it as a hobby since the mid-'70s. So it was probably 2.5, 3 years ago. I had just got a Rickenbacker, which are awesome guitars, and I absolutely love. And I found a video online walking through their factory, and I was like, hey, Dad, check this out. So we were taking a look at it. And as we were going through it and realizing, that he already has the know-how, he's got all the tools, I just said, hey, what do you think about us trying to put something together and build some guitars? And I was absolutely expecting him to shut me down on that idea, but he didn't. He was actually excited by it. So it's just one of those things, we had the tools, we had the know-how, and I'm one of those folks that I don't have any hobbies whatsoever outside of music. I know a lot of folks, like to watch baseball, football, they have their other things going on. And for me, it's always been, listening to records and, playing with pedals on the floor of my bedroom at 2:00 in the morning. So there wasn't really a good reason not to dive in and give it a go.
That's rad. My mind drifted there for a minute to the opening sequence of the old $6 Million Man show.
Steve Austin, astronaut, a man barely alive, We can rebuild him. We have the technology. We can make him better than he was. Better, stronger, faster.
Anyways, I'm sorry, that was ridiculous and silly. That is super cool that you're doing that with your dad. Now, you said you have the tools and the know-how. Where does that come from?
He actually used to be a home builder way back in the day, and he plays guitar. His father plays guitar. My grandmother played guitar. So, when he was, gosh, I can't even do the math. In the mid 70s, he had started doing that as a hobby with just a passion for woodworking. I mean, he's a guy that can do just about anything out there. He's a master craftsman. And
does he have a cool mustache?
He doesn't. He does have a beard, and it's not uncommon for my friends to tell me that he looks shockingly close to Kenny Rogers. So he probably will hate that hearing it on here, but I love you, Dad. You got to throw the joke in there.
My grandpa got that for years as well. Yeah, he had the gray beard and looked just like Kenny.
Yeah. So what took you guys so long to put that math together? I mean, that seems like a pretty obvious thing. Like, wait, everybody plays guitar and we have a woodworking master.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I kind of am inclined to, agree with your sentiments on that. I don't know what really took so long. From my end, I've always been into effects pedals, pickups, the electronic side of things. So with his know-how, his craftsmanship, he's incredibly anal when it comes to anything about guitars or crafts or perfection, and I'm the same way when it comes to sound. So it just ended up being a really good match. He's super particular about certain things that I may be a little less particular about, and vice versa. So it's a surprisingly good balancing act for a father-son combination to be able to complement each other so well.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I mean, I think if you are a man in the world, I was trying to pick which, are you a boy, are you a man, are you a son, whatever. But assuming you have a father, I think that's always something that is attractive. It's like, it's one of those things you're like, oh, I'd like to take a train across the North America, and I'd also like to do something great with my father. or I don't know. I just put those two together. I'm rando tonight, man. Okay.
Wow.
So let's kind of like just describe these real quick here. Tony was instantly intrigued because he loves Rickenbackers.
I love me some Rickenbackers.
And we're also, if this was a wine, we'd be going, I see a
delicate bouquet.
A bit
very
of a bouquet,
very earthy.
an earthy tone of Rickenbacker with a slight fruity waft of K or silver tone maybe in there.
So I showed Todd, I have a 360F, which is, their semi-hollow, basically, a flat top, flat bottom, Gretsch shape that Rick did in the 60s, actually in the 50s and even into the 60s. And I said, boy, it's, it has the same kind of feel to it. And it looks like, I'm just,
I don't necessarily agree, but that's okay.
Oh, geez. Well, he doesn't, that's okay. Todd doesn't agree with anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
in the sense that it looks like a guitar. Yes.
Well, it does have three knobs. That makes it different.
Yeah. So as we're talking about these,
but in terms of construction, it looks like you're scooping out things. Not pretty much how Ricks are made. Is that true? At least on these semi-hollow ones.
Yeah, it's a similar design. I mean, one of the things that we did is we went through 2 solid years of prototyping different combinations of wood, and every little thing you can imagine, from the nut to the bridge to the fretboard material. And what we'd found is when we did the original design, it was a rather hefty guitar. So one of the things that's a little bit unique about it in relation to a Rick, one, it does have a mahogany core to it, whereas Ricks are all maple. And then also what we did is we removed some of the wood, though there is a center block running down the center. We removed the wood in between the pickups as well as behind the bridge. So it has a little bit more of a, yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more hollow than a typical Rick.
But not as hollow as a semi-hollow. Because I'm looking at one of the photos on your Instagram where it looks like the lower horn is solid, or at least not scooped out yet.
So that's the newer model that we're working on. On the other guitars that are posted on our website, it's actually scooped out on both ends, and it's much more hollow. But since we're doing a smaller body on that one, I thought it'd be interesting to take a little bit of a different approach to it. So that one's not quite as hollowed out as the other models are.
Well, I was making the note to Tony that like I feel like that might have given it like a great sense of balance. I didn't realize that was a smaller body, but having that sort of lower horn, which is, it's kind of like a mid-engine car, like this solid, everything else is all lightweight, just giving it a nice sense of balance there. We've kind of dove right into the construction and everything, but I just want to paint a quick picture for those who are listening who aren't able to see these guitars real quick. We're looking at, it's a flat top, flat back, semi-hollow looking guitar, F-hole, and it's got single horn. So it's reminiscent of 335.
I'd call it more like a Super 400 or an L5.
Okay, or something that other people like
I will take
reference.
that as a compliment.
Yeah, I'm just saying, in the sense of if you think of a semi-hollow body guitar,
I'm thinking.
Okay, except if you turn it sideways, it looks like a Tele thin line in that aspect. So where it's like super flat, and that's what was interesting to me. And I didn't pick that up the first time I saw these. I just thought, oh, this is sort of a modern, like a modern flavor of, sort of that old Rick, old K, old Silvertone kind of, look. But then, I saw the sign. I was like, that thing is completely flat. And that was really intriguing. These also each have their own burst to it, like a color burst. One's got a green burst. One's got a red and black burst. And so there's a throwback quality to it. It also has a nice flavor of some modern appointments to it. So closest thing that I could think of were some of like the Maton from Australia.
Good day, mate.
From like Queens of Stone Age was playing those for quite a while. Now they're playing Echo Park. But those were sort of big body, super flat.
Yes.
Throwback, but had modern appointments.
Yes.
Kind of reminiscent of that. It's all over the place. There's lots of things in there. Go look at them for yourself. I'm gonna shut up.
Stop the descriptions.
So sorry, everybody.
Now I'm confused.
I thought it was a guitar.
Sitting right here. You have 2 models out right now, right?
So we have 2 models out right now. There is a third that we had prototyped, and it's actually a super thin body. It's almost like a jazz box. It doesn't have a cutaway to it. I'm working to perfect that a little bit. It's a single pickup model. On the prototype that we originally did, we put the pickup somewhere in between where the neck and the bridge would go. And I'd like to move that up into the neck position. And the goal is to add a couple bass cut switches so that it can be a little bit more flexible. So that's one that's kind of out there, but not fully out there. And then we're working on the smaller body, kind of my take on an electric parlor guitar. And interestingly enough, last week when I was out in the shop, I took that same pattern and I turned it around to see what it would look as a double cutaway model. And Todd, I'm sure you know this being in design. Sometimes it's like banging your head against the wall. You're sitting there for hours trying to come up with something. And then other days you draw something up and you're like, hey, that looks pretty cool. And only took 10 minutes and there's no really rhyme or reason behind it.
Right.
So I did that and drew up a pickguard design. And it was something my dad thought was pretty cool. And the next day I had a customer reach out to me and say, hey, have you ever considered doing something that's like a double cutaway? Kind of like a Les Paul Jr. And I was like, interestingly enough, yesterday I started drawing that up. So that's something I'm excited about, and that will hopefully be in the works in the next month or so.
That's cool. And that'll still be that big body semi-hollow thing going on?
That'll be the smaller bodied one, but just a double cutaway version. But instead of doing it short scale, we'll probably do the 24 3/4 scale that we have on the other models.
Okay. Because I was looking at the one where you've got the single cutaway with the more pronounced horn, and I thought, oh my gosh, that is a double cutaway would look sick. I'm just saying.
It would be kind of Trini Lopez-ish.
Yeah, that would look really cool. Okay, you're just starting out. I mean, and by just starting out, you've obviously been working on this for like 2 years, but you know, it's not like you're a household name at this point. You're doing semi-hollow body guitar in Nashville. What are you thinking? I mean, I'm just saying,
there's absolutely no market for a hollow body guitar in Nashville.
Why isn't it a Telecaster?
I'm just saying, like, there's no more odds to stack against this endeavor, but you managed to do something I think that's rather unique. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so a couple of things there. I think the first thing is, and I may catch some flack for this. Let me preface it by saying I absolutely love Telecasters, but does the world really need another guy, you know, with a bolt-on neck Tele putting, you know, Gibson style pickups in it?
No, they don't.
Okay, we'll play along with you. No.
And then on the other side of that, you know, as I'd mentioned before, I grew up listening to 60s music. That's where my heart is, you know, watching Harrison play those huge Gretches, you know, John Lennon with the Casinos, and an unhealthy obsession with Back to the Future and watching Marty McFly with that 335. And there's just something about a hollow and semi-hollow body guitar that, you know, not everyone has to feel this way, but for me, like I played those for so long, you know, strapping a solid body on feels a little bit sterile because I don't, you know, feel the air going through the guitar as, you know, I'm playing through a cranked amp. So that's just one of those things that I've always played, but with all the guitars that I have, you know, there's things that I feel like could be perfected on them. So like, you know, I have a 335, which is an incredible guitar and sounds awesome with overdrive. But one of the things is with Gibsons, they sound incredible with overdrive, but I kind of prefer the cleans of a Fender. So, you know, that's one of the things I wanted to do is find a guitar that could, you know, play and sound, you know, equally well in the hands of, you know, Noki Edwards as in the hands of Ron Ashton. And then, you know, the thin line of the guitar, most semi-hollows, you know, the thinnest aside from Ricks that are out there, usually like 1 3/4, 2 inches. You know, there's some ones much bigger than that. But once I bought that Rick several years back and I started playing it, I was like, man, this is just so comfortable to play.
Which model do you have?
I've got the 330.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And something about it just felt right, you know, and I've got a Gretsch that I absolutely love, but it's full hollow, a little bit more prone to feedback. So I wanted to take all the things that I loved about my guitars and put them into, you know, something of my own, a bit unique, but that took all those little bits and pieces that I grew to love about each of them and threw them in one instrument.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you've got some influences here. Walk us through some of your design decisions, because it's so rare to actually be able to come up with something that doesn't exactly look like something else. Even if there's influences all over the place, if you can look at that and you can say, huh, that's unique in its reference-y kind of way.
Yeah, for sure. And without a doubt, that's been, for me personally, the biggest challenge is coming up with a design that looks cool and unique and not ridiculous at the same time, because there's a fine line there. Ever since I was little, man, I loved the budget guitars from like Sears catalogs. You know, like you're talking about the Silver Tones. You have your Nationals. It's not necessarily a budget guitar, but, you know, in that vein design-wise. And for me, interestingly enough, I think my biggest inspiration is like antique radios, which may not make a whole lot of sense. But, you know, when you're at an antique store and you're seeing those old radios from the 40s, like somewhere towing the line of Art Deco in mid-century, that's just where it's always been at for me. And you know, every time I've gone to a pawn shop or a guitar store and I pick up an old K or Harmony, like I want to buy it so much, but they're just not great guitars. And thanks to the Black Keys and Jack White, they fetch absurd prices these days. So my goal was to come up with something that was inspired by those designs, but spared no expense on the components and the quality of it. So you could really just take it out on the road, beat it to hell. It's going to stay in tune. It's going to play great. You're not going to have to worry about, those things like, well, what's the action like? Does it feel as good as it looks on stage?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's we were talking about that before,
like almost word for word.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
And I hear what you're saying about the old harmonies and Ks and things like that. If somebody ever asks me what they want something like that, but maybe don't want to spend a silly amount of money on something that's substandard, maybe. I always point them towards like the Eastwood stuff, because I think Mike Robinson has taken that. Basically those designs and shapes and things, and in some cases, I think they even bought the naming rights, like on the airline stuff, and they're making a better quality model of guitar than if some of the vintage pieces.
Oh wow!
Yeah, for sure. I've got one of his 12 strings, and for the price, it really can't be beat. He's done.
Yeah.
Well, we'll save all that for the Eastwood show. Yeah, hopefully. Yes, Jared.
Those guys, I think, have a factory in Nashville now, so you might be able to make that connection when you're down here.
Excellent.
Yeah, we can do that.
So I'm wondering, you do this with your dad, right? Where does your dad play a part in this? So you've talked about the design and where you got your inspiration for all that. So does your dad? Did he have more of the know-how with the getting down and dirty with the tools and all that kind of thing? But
yeah, for sure. That's exactly right. Right now, I'm definitely learning, and I'm still heavily involved in the building of the guitars with the bodies. But when it comes down to, shaping the necks and fitting the neck joints on the set necks and stuff, that's really his wheelhouse, and I'm learning every day, but he's the master when it comes to stuff like that. And I really lean heavily on him for his knowledge, know-how, and really his ability to pull just about anything off. I mean, the guy's incredible when it comes to anything woodworking or building. So I just fortunate that I have that resource by blood. I couldn't really ask for a better one.
Did he have any say with any of the design?
It's funny that you asked that. I always ask him anytime that I make adjustments. And Todd, you may know what this is like being in design, but I'm old school. Funnily enough, whenever I'm designing guitars, I know a lot of folks use computers these days. I actually go out and get a big piece of paper from like Staples or something like that that's squared off in inches, and everything is done by hand. So like I'll spend 2 hours on the floor moving the curve of a cutaway for, like an 1/8 of an inch this way, an 1/8 of an inch that way. All that being said, anytime I make an adjustment or a change, I'll snap a picture of it or take it over and ask him what he thinks. And it's really funny because he tells me now that even though I ask for his advice, I never take it, and whatever I think wins out every time, which it's true. But yeah, he's definitely involved. It's a great feeling whenever I do something that I'm super stoked about, and he's like, "Yeah, that looks really good." Just having that extra input there. But I think when it comes to the design of things, ultimately, I'm just more stubborn than he is, so I'll probably win out in the end.
Well, the reason I ask is because mostly because I'm kind of envious that you get to work with your dad on something like this. I think this is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's surprisingly cool. I think that if, he and I were of the same age and grew up together, we probably would have been the kind of guys that got in a lot of trouble hanging out. So I feel very fortunate for sure, without a doubt.
Cool.
You mentioned the large drawing everything out. That reminded me. So I reference Chase Gullett from Chasing Vintage Guitars often because he lives close by me and he makes incredible guitars. And I remember going over every time I go over there. He's like, hey, I got a new design, or I'm working on this one. And he's got all these big giant pieces of paper. And I remember seeing that the first time, and I thought, wow, you're doing like, that's really cool that you're laying it out all by hand. And you just don't, I guess, you don't see that as much anymore. His was just out of necessity. He's like, I just didn't want to mess around with computers. I
didn't want to buy a giant 3D.
My wife hates it. At any given moment in time while I'm working on designs, there's like 4 giant pieces of paper just taped to the walls around the house. And whenever I was designing the custom tail pieces that I did for the guitars, I did get to work in some CAD software, and it's a lot of fun. But for me, I've just always done things paper pencil, and that's just the way I prefer to operate when I'm in design mode.
That's cool. I need to hit him up and see if he can donate Chase one of his drawings, even if it's one that didn't make it to finish for our wall in here. We got
just put it right up there.
That'd be pretty cool.
How about as far as the finish work? Are you guys doing that in-house? And what type of finish do you like to use?
Yeah, so we're definitely doing nitro finish, which is really fun and annoying to work with all at the same time.
Smells good.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I'll go into the spray booth and forget to have my mask on.
Oh, that's a problem.
And then you forget to leave.
And then 3 days later, I come out.
It's funny. I'll go in there and I'll come out and be like, man, are the fans working right in there? And I'll just realize I didn't have my mask on while I was in there. Yeah. But that's one of my favorite parts of the process. It's super, it can be frustrating because finish work is just finicky. But for me, when you're putting the sunburst or spraying the finish on it, it's kind of when the guitar starts to become alive. So I like working with nitro and doing the finishing work. It's not easy and always fun as, textbook definition, but that's one of the parts that I enjoy the most.
Are you getting very exploratory-ish? No. Are you how do you
explorative?
Experimental.
Experimental with. I mean, you're staying to sort of the classic '60s kind of colors, but have you had the request to get crazy with it yet?
I haven't necessarily got requests, but it's interesting that you say that. One of the things that we're doing on the newer models, one of them is going to have a walnut stained top. And then for the back and sides, we're going to do, I've heard it referred to as like a dog hair finish on it, to where we're going to spray that white and then come in after spraying it with a walnut stained wood filler. So you get that kind of TV yellow look on it. So that's something that I'm excited about exploring with these newer models.
That's cool. Excellent.
And you'd mentioned you have well, obviously I haven't seen the tailpiece on anything else. So you actually designed that, and are you having that made for you, or is that something you're doing in-house too?
No, that's actually something that we're having made for us. We're fortunate enough being in Nashville.
I know where.
I know where.
Yeah. And those guys are awesome. I feel like I may have been the the squeaky wheel with Jeremy over there, because, just getting started, I was like, well, how much would it, cost to do 5, which just isn't an option for stuff like those guys.
Exactly.
But they've been fantastic to work with. And one of the guys over there, actually, we have him playing one of our guitars from when we were at Amigo Guitar Show, and super nice folks, and couldn't recommend working with them enough.
Are you talking about Frank playing the guitar?
Yeah, I think so.
He's really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
It is a handsome tailpiece.
Yes, it is.
We were all quickly drawn to that. And it's partially because it's one that I don't think that we've really seen. It's basically like if you ran over a trapeze with a pavement steamroller. It's a flat trapeze, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that I've always liked, and interestingly enough, I couldn't really tell you why, but through playing hollow body guitars, playing something with a trapeze like a Gretsch or the Rickenbacker, I just like having more string space behind the bridge of the guitar.
Yeah.
it seems like it affects the resonance of the guitar, just the way it feels when you're playing it. So I wanted to do something like that, and back to doing something, a bit unique. As we were designing these guitars, the tailpiece, when I draw it up with just like a stop bar, just didn't look right, and it made it definitely way more into like 135 territory or something like that. And then also, the hand turn ebony knobs that we do on there, that goes back to my being inspired by old antique radios. It just didn't seem to do the guitars justice to throw like plastic knobs on there. So that was kind of a last minute decision. But as we were building them and got the first few out, it's like, we've got to do something better than that. So I got a lathe and knocked those out. And that's another one of those parts. It's super tedious, but one of my favorite parts about building them.
So your pickup selector switch, I really like the plate you have that is reminiscent of the Harmony Meteor model. They have
for sure
the diamond. I really like that. I think that it's like tires on a car. Any little subtle detail just kind of sets out.
It's like tires on a car is what he said.
Yeah, I mean that's. Like tires on a car. I mean, you got crappy tires and wheels, right? The car looks like crap. You got,
if you have a car with no tires, then it really
my
looks
car
bad.
or your car?
You took the smallest thing on that guitar and then equated it to the
tires on a car. But it's true. Look at it. Look at the diamond on that guitar.
I know, dude. I know exactly where you're coming from.
It's like what, 10% of the guitar?
It's handsome.
And you sometimes see that Gibson used it on some of their models for the jack plate.
Right.
I've seen those. I think even on a Flying V, I've seen one, but on a definitely on like some of the big body guitars.
Yeah,
it looks really cool. It's just a really nice
Switchmaster
detail.
Well,
might have been
one of the that kind of goes along with a lot of when you especially when you look at the older model guitars, right? Something that I think modern design does is try very hard to be very symmetrical and to make sure that all the gaps are all the same. And I'm not just talking about guitars. I'm talking about product, right?
Tires.
There's a desire or a method of design that basically makes everything feel super, super, super balanced, right? And when you're looking at old, like the old Flying V or Explorer or any of the, it's like, I don't know, let's put a diamond on this thing that has all curves. And it's just one of those things that's why we still love those old guitars.
Yeah.
I was actually looking at this the other day. I've got a double cutaway Les Paul, and it's a special, and the actual pick guard isn't like the gaps around it aren't balanced at all. But I love it.
Yeah.
And it my eye keeps getting drawn to it. And I think that's something that when things are too balanced, your eye doesn't want to. It's just kind of like, all right, I get it.
There's nothing there. There's nothing to find. Eye.
Yeah. Like the little spaces in between the pick guards on the Flying V's and the Explorers are hilarious because it feels like a designer didn't do those. It feels like an engineer is like, well, I mean, just make it like that. They're just kind of. Well, why didn't you just follow the shape of the guitar right there, man?
That's funny. I think, did you guys, you interviewed Florian from Millimetric at one point, didn't you?
Great guy.
I remember listening to that, and he basically said the same thing. And I agree wholeheartedly that some of those older designs are super cool, but they couldn't make any less sense for the guitars that they're on from a design perspective.
Yeah. But you are complementing that. You're not just following that sort of rando kind of methodology. There are certain things where you're taking more modern edges, like, alignment of the knobs. It feels like the trapeze and the humbuckers and everything, the pickups those feel more modern put together, even though it's old stuff. But somehow it has a little bit of modern edge to it. I don't know how you do it. What are you doing? I don't know what you're doing.
Right, he put the diamond where the switch is. That's what he's doing.
Yeah, he put the diamond on the thing.
That's right.
Well, I'm huge on the little details. Like some of our guitars will put the diamond inlay fret markers on them, like you don't hardly see anymore. Right. And then Also, like the, I don't know if the pictures show it, but the strap buttons on our guitars, we try our best to make them match whatever the binding is. So it's not your standard nickel, but the little things like that, you know, when you put it all together to one piece, it ends up making a pretty big impact. And I'm a stickler for the details.
Sure.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I just leaned over to Tony and I keep looking at, there's one in particular here that I keep looking at. It kind of has like a green, almost like a green burst on it. And it might just be the picture, but it has a greenish hue to it. Gosh dang it. I'm just like really falling in love with these guitars right now, man. And I love at the bass, the butt end of the guitar. It's just a little squashed.
Yeah. So one of the other things that is, a pretty big influence for me is like acoustic guitar design, and a lot of the old dreadnoughts and things like that you'll see. They're always flat on the bottom of the guitar. And we also do a Bigsby option, which it just kind of helps make that whole process easier to have it flat there. But it's just one of those design decisions that I made when I was first starting to do it, you know. The more round it is, the more it just starts to look at like other guitars that have already been made. Yeah. So one of those small details that every time I make one, I try to, you know, just put, that's my signature for lack of a better word. Yeah, for sure.
No, for sure. You know, another design point that we were talking about was it would have been very easy to say, well, semi-hollow guitars and guitars of this ilk have this sort of hourglass shape. And then we started talking about you softened the hip and the horn area. It's just a tiny little thing that, again, A, makes it more unique, and B, doesn't make it just a throwback knockoff. It does feel modern. It has edge to it. Interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's that's awesome feedback, man. I appreciate it for sure.
I guess maybe last question about what goes into this. What are you using for your fretboard?
Yeah, so the fretboards are ebony.
Nice.
Really? Ebony's hard to get, or it's expensive, isn't it?
It is, but one of the philosophies, I guess, that sounds way more corporate than I would ever mean for it to, but behind, you know, building our guitars with my father, as I got together at the beginning, and I was like, look, man, let's, you know, regardless of price, let's always put quality and sound first and never, you know, cheapen out on components for it. And the ebony definitely does brighten up the guitar a little bit. Yeah. I like the way that it looks as well. Yeah. So along the lines of that, and sparing no expense, you know, we, as I mentioned before, tested out just about every component on the guitar, and we're going to everything from, you know, the fretboard material to capacitors. And we came across these Emerson capacitors, and you know, they're not the cheapest ones out there, but we did a blind listen test against 5 different capacitors, and myself, my father, and a buddy of mine said that's the one that sounds the best in the guitars, which we were kind of saddened by because they're like $15 a pop. But that's, you know, that's the whole mentality behind what we're doing with this is, you know, quality first in everything that we do. I mean, and a lot of these things are, you know, you're making like a 5% difference in tone or sound or feel, but, you know, that 5% over, you know, 6 or 7 things really adds up to a pretty big portion of the guitar once all considered. So we just made that decision from day one. You know, we're always going to go with quality sound and feel over anything else.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure first time anybody puts one of these things on and then reaches down to roll up the volume, they're going to be like, oh, that feels different. What is this, ebony? Oh, nice. You know, that's got to be, I hope to do that soon. Dude, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'm just really enjoying looking at these, and I can't wait to actually get one in my hands when we get down there. So, gentlemen, do you have any further questions for this key witness?
No, what's pickups? It looks like you're using mostly P90s. Is that right? Or are you using other variations thereof?
Yeah, so they're a P90 enclosure, but we actually worked with Lindy Fralin on those pickups. One of the things that's unique about doing a guitar that is somewhat acoustic in nature is it's not like a Telecaster. You know, you can't just throw any pickup in the guitar and it's going to sound fantastic regardless. So during that 2-year period where we're going through and prototyping and testing, I tried so many different pickups in this instrument, you know, from like Filtertron styles, humbuckers, etc. And what we ended up with as the best sounding pickup for our guitars was something that's similar to a P90, but it has Alnico rods in it instead. So going back to my preference for like the Fender clean tone as opposed to, you know, the Gibson clean tone. A lot of people think that the bolt-on neck is what makes a Fender sound different than Gibson's, and I'm sure it does to some point as well as scale, but to my ears, the steel pole pieces versus Alnico rods is probably the biggest component there. And we also have him wind them to our specs that fit these specific instruments and use threaded Alnico rods. So each guitar that we build is going to respond a little bit differently to the pickup. So that enables me in the final setup to go in and fine tune each pole piece on the pickup to make sure that you're getting a real even, you know, string response across the board.
So I'm going to assume they are single coil.
They are single coil. We have done hum canceling, and I like those as well. If someone's going to be using, you know, a lot of gain in their setup and they want a little bit of a darker tone, we'd be glad to do that. But the single coils definitely have a little bit more of a spank to them, and it's my personal preference.
Yeah, there you go.
I like it.
Actually, Gibson used Alnico rods in the 40s when they were building P90 type pickups, and they were putting them in steel guitars, lap steels. But I really like how you did your own thing. You totally went out of your way to just do your own thing that nobody else, I don't know anybody else that's using, you know, threaded magnets doing P90 stuff. That's great.
Okay, hey, everybody. Go ahead, Jared.
Well, it's time for Would You Rather?
All right.
All right, this week's Would You Rather. So you walk into a thrift store because you're going to build an amplifier, but you're looking for a really cool enclosure for the amp, which led you to the thrift store. So you're going to choose between an old TV, an old tube TV with a nice big square enclosure, or are you going to choose an old radio enclosure?
So it's hilarious that you started talking about that, Zach, because like that's what Tony and I were talking about before this. It's just funny how you like your stuff paralleled everything that we were talking about before the show.
I know.
So it was perfect.
He may have been listening in.
Maybe he was. That's weird. Okay, so excellent. Good job, Jared.
I don't care.
Tony.
I'm going to take the old TV so I can put 8-inch speakers in it.
Oh, jeez.
That's what I'm going to do. Plus, it'll be, you know, a nice big box.
Because the
I like
8-inch
that.
speakers break up better, right?
Oh yeah, they're the best.
Nice.
I might put some 6s in there too on the back.
Right.
That's what I think.
Some
I
like-
think the TV. I think the
Okay.
TV gives you a little more space.
I like that. Jared?
I'm going to go with the radio because I think if I made an amp out of a radio, it would be so simple and easy. You wouldn't have to drill in any more holes for the on and off button and the tuner button. It would just be a volume button and a tone button instead. So my grandpa could use it if he wanted to, because he's old and he complains about newer things with all these buttons on it.
Newfangled button things.
And he still
Of
plays
all
the
the
guitar.
things to consider. Zach, what are you doing?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I'm old school radio, hands down, all the way.
There you go.
All righty. All right. I'm
Todd,
going
what
with
about
the TV because I want to put a cool cloth where the TV tube was.
Really?
Yes, with a 15-inch speaker behind it. No, I'm just kidding.
Come on, do an 18. Do an 18.
I like the idea of like maybe a 410, you know, sort of make
Yeah,
an old
that would be
basement kind
kinda-
of out of it. You
Yeah,
know?
that would be kind of fun.
I could dig that.
Some of those huge console TVs, I mean, humongous. They're like furniture, right?
Yeah, they are for sure.
Crazy.
So, Zach, where can people reach you?
Yes, we're on Instagram at McPeters Guitars, and they can also go to our site at McPetersGuitars.com.
Excellent. And you're down in Nashville?
I am. I I'm just a little bit west of the city, but yeah, right in the area for sure.
Okay. So get a hold of him and go down and play one of those guitars. Get your hands on one of these things. They're mighty fine looking, people.
Yeah, so we're going to be listing some of the guitars that we took to the show and that we've shown around a bit that have minimal sides of wear at a little bit of a discounted rate, and we'd like to extend a 10% discount to Guitar Knobs listeners. So if you're interested, shoot us a note. Let us know that you listen to the podcast, and we'd be glad to help you out.
I love it.
Excellent.
I love it,
man.
That is super cool. Thank you for doing that. It's a nice treat for our listeners. And man, oh man, if you can get your hands on one of those, I'm sure there's not a big giant stack of them. So get on that and get your 10% off. Thanks so much for doing that, Zach. Tony.
Yes, if you need a custom pickguard or even a not so custom pickguard, go over to pickguardian.com. You can also visit on Instagram and Facebook at pickguardian and the number 1.
Perfect. Jared.
Hey, Brandon Wom Pickups. We build boutique ups.
Teacups. You make teacups?
We make boutique cups
Out of boats?
That's right. We build boutique pickups, new and vintage down to the T. We also do rewinds at a low cost with a fast turnaround. Jared at BrandonWoundPickups.com. JARED, BrandonWoundPickups.com.
Excellent. And if you want to drop me a line at Todd at theguitarknobs.com, I would love to hear from you.
Yep.
Or hang out on our social stuff. We like that too. Tony, we got some people to thank.
Yes, we do. We would like to thank our executive producers.
Excellent.
Those would include people like Tom Barazin, Martin Cliff, David Wolfson, Matt Brammer, Carlos Mancha, Pete Marshall, Derek Fitzer, Robin Smith, John Daly, Oliver Gonzalez, Sean S., Chris Kearney, John Anglin, Robert Marfleet, Darren Gregory, Gary Goodman, Zach J. Wright, and Doug Chris.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
What tier level gets you that?
That would be the executive tier level, executive producer. And it counts for $10 a month
You get
or
to
more.
have, yeah, and you get to have your name right on the thing.
You get your name right on the thing and lots of other fun prize packages. And you also get a button for your T-shirt.
Not a button for your T-shirt.
We're playing charades right now.
You'll get a button for your T-shirt, but not from us. It'll be in the builder's pack that we include.
The builder's pack. So go over to patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs and find out how you too can become a patron.
Get your name right.
As well as an executive producer.
Yes, $1, $5, $10. We appreciate it all.
Hundreds,
Anything, man.
300s,
We get a lot of
500s,
ones.
thousands.
We're
Bring the thousands ones in.
We are very thankful for them at all levels. We got a couple
Absolutely.
new ones this week at the $1, and we are very grateful for you.
Thank you, guys.
Danke Shane.
Everyone, we are so grateful for your listenership and for your inclusion in our guitar world as a whole. Zach, thank you very much for joining us and hanging out during this interview. It was a pleasure to talk with you and to get to know your guitars a little bit more. Everybody, go check these things out, will you? Subscribe! Yeah! There's a fine line between clever and stupid. So let's... What the hell was that? Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.